JWL Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the world. Now you're probably wondering, why should I watch over here instead of any of the other channels? And that's because over there, they don't care about what you have to say. They don't read any of the comments, they talk down to us, they think we're just a bunch of clowns on YouTube, Twitter. But I think it's the opposite. I think we know exactly what we're talking about. So I read every single comment. So if you think what I'm saying is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, let me know in the comments below. If you think what I'm saying is the most amazing thing, then definitely please let me know. Either way, let's get into some discussions, let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and it's turning into something truly, truly special. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. So without further ado, let's get to it. We're watching a clip of The Herd with Colin Cowherd talking about the Bears and Caleb Williams. I've talked about this before. Before, a lot of people were saying when I did a video, at this point, I guess it was a couple months ago, about Caleb Williams not being drafted by Chicago and how he's made the announcement that he doesn't even want to go to Chicago. That turns out to not be true, that he's actually would be more than happy to go to Chicago. I think he's nervous and unsettled, but his team has come out to say that, like, you know, he is not a villain. He is not trying to pull like what, you know, Eli Manning did or John Elway did, or, you know, any of these people who were like, no, I am not going to, you know, this team. So, which I think is, you know, pretty interesting. But let's see what Colin has to say, and then we can jump into it.
Executives, USC's quarterback is the best quarterback prospect they can remember. Better than Andrew Luck, a five-tool guy. Led the nation in offense despite having only one great teammate the last 2 years. Daniel Jeremiah yesterday, about as smart as guy as our space has, said he'd be surprised if the Bears didn't take him number one. Yes, they should take him number one. He's a LeBron as a prospect. He's an Andrew Luck or a Trevor Lawrence. But people think in terms of football, not basketball, guys, he's better. And I want you to think about this. I want you to try to relate to this. You come out of college, you're number one in your law class. Not at your school, but in the country. You went to Duke or Virginia. You went to Cal, whoever has a good law firm or a good law school. Michigan, Texas, whoever, Virginia, whoever. Number one. And you don't really have a choice where you go. And the law firm that has the number one pick has no history of winning consistently and is actually, for your position, quarterback, professional quicksand. Would you be a little anxious about it? The Chicago Bears are not a winning football operation. In the last decade, they finished last 50% of the time. They have a head coach that if he loses games in September, he's on the hot seat. They have the only defensive coach in the division, and the Packers and the Lions are young, really good at quarterback, winning with a ton of momentum. And Minnesota's always pretty good.
So the thing is that I want to point out with his kind of analogy that I think is kind of flawed in many ways. I get the point that he's trying to make and what he's trying to get to, but, and again, I've been banging on this drum for a while now about how important it is to be where you go, and I've said this repeatedly now a million times, that Patrick Mahomes would not be Patrick Mahomes if he wasn't drafted and got to be with Andy Reid. It's not to say that Patrick Mahomes would have just been this bust or this complete scrub or still wouldn't be considered to be one of the best and maybe still the best quarterback in the NFL, but he wouldn't have had all the success that he has had, which is then what really has elevated Patrick Mahomes to Patrick Mahomes levels. He would not have the same playoff record, all the same stats. He just wouldn't. If he was drafted by the Carolina Panthers or the Chicago Bears, he just wouldn't be. Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs organization as a whole has had a tremendous impact on his growth and development. To me, it's just undeniable. Now, in terms of with Caleb Williams, though, and his like law school analogy or whatever, the only difference is this. I understand why Caleb would be nervous and uncomfortable and, you know, wants to go to a good spot, right? I totally get that, and that makes 100% sense. But at the same time, if you're like a lawyer or whatever like that, and you go to and you don't get to have a choice where you go, and your whole career could be ruined, which theoretically Caleb Williams' career could be ruined. But let's just say, and this is going to be a little bit of an unpopular opinion, let's just say he does get drafted to a place and it really kind of just, they fumble the bag and they just kind of ruin his career for whatever reason, right? Just because they got the wrong coaches, wrong players, and now he was never able to really like grow and succeed, and now people just have given up with him. Well, one, I think Caleb Williams has two way of a high stock that even if he goes to Chicago and he plays terrible and it's a disaster, I don't think people are going to just cut bait with him and just say, "Oh, wow, he was an epic bust." They would be like, no, we don't trust Chicago. Chicago has not proven to be able to do anything in nearly decades. We don't trust them. So I don't think that they would just scratch him, right? Like kind of like what we saw with Baker Mayfield. He kind of bounced around a little bit, but they didn't ever really fully give up on him because they were like, well, this is the Cleveland Browns. Well, this is the Carolina Panthers. And so he got chances. Sean McVay was like, I'll take Baker. And then he played pretty well. And then Tampa Bay was like, we'll take Baker. And he was able to step up. So to me, unless obviously you get a crazy injury, there's just no reason to believe that Caleb Williams wouldn't get at least multiple team chances if Chicago really ends up being like an epic disaster. That's number one. Number two, he's also going to get paid more money just by being the number one overall pick than 99.9% of the world will make in their entire lifetime. So that alone now, it's like even if you're a bust, it's still a grand slam because you're still making more money that you'll never have to work ever again. And as long as you're not a complete fool with your money, which it seems like Caleb Williams has pretty good family around him and stuff like that, and he seems to have a good head on his shoulders, that he's not just going to blow all that money. So again, it's still life-changing and will benefit him forever. A lawyer who gets to a new job, lawyers make a ton of money too, but they're not making NFL quarterback money, and not to mention the way how they make their money is more over a long-term career. In sports, you can get a lot of money in a very short window of time. So that's where that kind of analogy. And he says, try to relate to this. Can you all relate to being a world-class lawyer where you're the best in the country? I don't think so. Maybe some of you are, and congratulations, but that's like a weird thing to be like, let's see if you can relate to this. Imagine you're the greatest lawyer in the country. It's like, okay, sure, I guess so. So I just thought that was like a pretty weird comparison. But I think, well, here, let me just see what else he has to say.
And young quarterbacks overwhelmingly are as good as where they land. I mean, Justin Fields is 10-28. Do you think he'd be 10-28 if he inherited Andy Reid? I don't.
I was just saying.
The Bears have had one winning season in 11 years. They haven't won a playoff game in 14. They haven't had an offense in the top 15 in the last decade. It is Loserville offensively, and their division looks really, really, really good. And so there are concerns, and I pointed them out yesterday on the show from Caleb Williams and his camp. This is not the perfect destination. Washington at number 2, in my opinion, he's from there, is a much better landing spot. But I got a call yesterday from the Caleb Williams camp. By the way, he's got a very small camp. He doesn't have an entourage. He's got like an assistant for the NIL stuff, a marketing person. He doesn't have a big camp. He has a dad, big personality, smart guy, strong opinions, does his homework. Caleb and his dad don't always agree, but he's got a very big personality as a father. So I got a call from the Caleb Williams camp, and they went, whoa, Colin. We don't want to be painted as anti-Chicago, and we don't want to be painted as anti-Bear. And they made it clear to me that they said, listen, we don't want to go to a city that doesn't care. Chicago cares. They're big, loud, they're passionate. They fire coaches all the time. They care. We don't want to go to some Sunbelt place where you tarp off the upper deck. And they did say there is a path to succeed in Chicago. It's called the Houston Texans. Defensive coach, couple of weapons, cap space, good pick. They mentioned they got a second pick. There's a bunch of good receivers out there. LSU, Washington, they could go get another weapon, and they already have one bona fide number 1 pick. But it does show you the reality of Caleb Williams, and I've got sympathy for the athlete. I'm a radio guy. I could have failed at my first job. It didn't matter. I got a 50, 60-year runway.
Well, but this is interesting, though, because he doesn't seem to be extending that same quote-unquote sympathy to a Justin Fields. And when I made my earlier video with regards to the Bears and Caleb and Fields, a lot of fans from the Bears came out and said, we want Justin Fields. We like Justin Fields. We kind of blame the franchise, more than anything else, and that they didn't do enough to support him. I can see the argument going both ways, but I think it's just kind of interesting because I think Caleb Williams is clearly a better prospect than Justin Fields. I mean, he's one of the best prospects, in decades. Caleb is. And I think even though you weren't able to support Justin Fields to the max, as say like an Andy Reid would have been able to do, or Shanahan or McVay, you still saw enough. And I don't think there was enough good in Justin Fields. Not to mention, and it's actually more about that. Just Caleb Williams is such a high level prospect that you would be crazy to let that opportunity pass. Because if you have these two prospects between Caleb Williams and Justin Fields, you have to bet on Caleb Williams. You just do. And not to mention, you also get to reset the rookie deal all over again, which now really significantly helps you being able to build a competitive team and franchise for years to come. So that alone now is really important to do. So I think if you're coming from a Chicago Bears, like it's a no-brainer to pick to draft Caleb Williams, and you might be able to get something decent for Justin Fields. I don't think you're going to get anything crazy. I don't think you're going to be getting a couple first round picks for him, but I think you'll be able to get something for him, which is of course better than nothing. Maybe a second round pick again. I don't really know. I think it's always too hard to really kind of gauge those types of trades. But I think that's really what you have to do. And I think if you're a Chicago Bears fan, you should be really excited that you essentially are having the opportunity to draft the potential Michael Jordan, or LeBron James, right? Like it's kind of like the equivalent type of prospect of entering the league in that regard, of being like, this guy is supposed to be the next big greatest thing, all this hype, which you don't always have with NFL athletes. I mean, think about Patrick Mahomes has become essentially the LeBron James of the modern day NFL, and yet there was no massive hype around him. Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow had hype, but I don't think people were saying Joe Burrow is this bona fide, oh my God, he's going to take over the NFL. In fact, people were questioning it. They were like, well, he only had one good year in college. Like, was that just one good year? Was that more of a fluke? Like, there was those types of conversations. Again, outside of people who are just maybe hating on Caleb, it just seems to be like this unanimous first round, like he is going to be just a great player. And now the real question is can Chicago maximize that? And I think it's just going to be difficult to see right now, because you have to trust Chicago, but Chicago has not done anything for them to earn your trust in the past. So it's like, so why should you trust them? And I don't believe that a quarterback, and especially a young player in general, has the ability just to overcome a franchise that is just not good, who just does not support their players, who does not have good coaching staff in place, players drafting, all of those things, free agencies, acquisitions, all of that. But with that said, I think you could still see enough in a player, even if they're in a bad situation. So that's why I think Justin Fields is like, you could be like, well, yes, maybe this wasn't the most perfect situation, but I would still see more from him. Like I said, Patrick Mahomes could have gone to the Bears, and sure, he wouldn't be Patrick Mahomes, but you would still see enough where you'd be like, okay, this dude can play, right? We saw that with Josh Allen. We saw that with Dak Prescott. We see that with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert was not drafted in a great situation with great coaches, but you could still see some moments where you're like, yeah, if we can support this guy can take us to the promised land. But Trevor Lawrence, with his first year, when he was first drafted by the Jags, like that first season was like really not good. And then finally they fired their coach, got Doug Peterson. He was able to right the ship and got them to the playoffs. So you were able to see some pretty rapid progression. You were able to see that skill set really develop. And I don't know, so again, so that could be Justin Fields' situation as well. But I just think that he played enough games where you would see a more composed, higher concentrated level of play that would give you that more confidence. Again, saw it with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield got off to an interesting start, got drafted into a poorly run organization. Their head coach was fired, and they were hiring a million coaches. What did he have, like 4 or 5 coaches in less amount of years, and yet you would say that, okay, maybe Baker Mayfield isn't this bona fide number 1 overall pick who's going to take over the NFL, but he could still play in the NFL. You still knew that he was one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. Again, top 5, no, but the bottom of the barrel, need to just like cut him and go. know either. And you were able to clearly see that when he played for the Cleveland Browns. You could see, okay, there's something to him. He can ball, he can play, and he cares too. Justin Fields, and from my viewpoint, has not shown you enough relative to what, say, like a Baker Mayfield, because I think they were kind of drafted in very similar situations, very struggling franchises, passionate about their football, care, want to see them do better. Probably poor coaching in the beginning, at least as a poor offensive coaching in the beginning, and also very highly sought after. Fields was obviously at the top, and so was Baker Mayfield being the number 1 overall pick. So I think you just have to, the Bears have to be smart here. And I would have fired their coach, honestly. I would have went out. I would have tried to make a play at like a Ben Johnson, because Ben Johnson didn't want to go get away, the OC from Detroit. But if they had the number 1 overall pick, if you said, hey, you're going to be able to shape Caleb Williams, it's hard to imagine. Or even a Harbaugh. Like, I don't know. Like, hey, Harbaugh, you're gonna get Caleb Williams. Like, I don't know. Like, there's other coaches I think you could have gotten with a Caleb Williams, and they just didn't. They stuck with their defensive identity, and I think that's a pretty big mistake. So yeah, I do feel for Caleb Williams because I want to see him succeed. I don't want to see another quarterback get lost in the fold of a poorly run franchise like we see with Josh Allen, like we see with Justin Herbert, and it's just a bummer because I know these quarterbacks can be so much greater than what they are. And now hopefully they're on the path to doing that, especially with the Chargers with Harbaugh. And you'll have to just see what happens with Caleb. But it's just, again, it's unfortunate if Caleb Williams starts off and then now he's going to have like 2 or 3 coaches in 2 or 3 years. That's difficult. That is turmoil. And that is the biggest gift that the Kansas City Chiefs were able to give Patrick Mahomes. They got Andy Reid and stability and a good GM and great players around him from the jump, like Kelsey, Hill, and other players. And so that is why, it's like children. When you raise children in a happy and healthy household, they are so much more supported and are so much better at going into the real world. And when kids are born and raised in a hostile environment, abusive environment, we know that it is a much harder battle to overcome. And you know what? Quarterbacking and just really players in general, they are no exception to that. But what do you all think? What do you think Caleb Williams should do? Do you think he should just maybe be like, I don't want to play for Chicago? Do you think he should just be like, no, I'm excited to play for Chicago? Or do you think that Chicago shouldn't even draft him, that they should stick with Fields? Would love to hear your thoughts on this one. Please let me know in the comments below. Please don't forget to subscribe. As I said, we are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really helps with the visibility and the algorithm, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much, and see you next time.